everyone. I'm Dennis Levinson, the County Executive. It's wonderful to have you all here in Atlantic County and Atlantic City. The Governor will have a few words to share with you. As most of you know, I have great affection for the Governor and had a long friendship, and happen to like him a lot more now that the 13.5% percentage on the pilot will be in stone. And it is appreciated, and I'm sure I'm talking for all of the municipalities in Atlantic County, including Atlantic City that pays county taxes, that this will make a difference of $4 million a year for the life of the pilot. So it's a 10-year pilot, that's $40 million more coming in. So we're very, very pleased. And you know, we've had our differences, the Governor and I, and in fact we don't agree on everything. He likes Trump, I like Cruz, but that's the way things are. And when this is over, we'll all be friends again. And we have a crisis here in this city, and we all know. But I want to make this very, very clear to everyone about Atlantic City. Atlantic City is still number 3 in the country with gaming revenue. That's not bad. It's still over $2 billion a year. We still have the finest restaurants, the finest chefs, the finest entertainment, the finest beach, the finest boardwalk. This is the entertainment capital of this country and has been historically. And we want to bring it back to the way it was. So the problem we had is the competition we had in Pennsylvania. That's what caused the casinos to close. And you know, with all of you listening, we are going to do our best here in this county and throughout all of South Jersey to make sure that casino gaming remains in Atlantic City exclusively. I had to get that in, Governor.
There you go.
So with that, it is my pleasure to introduce to you the Governor of New Jersey, Christie.
Thank you. A few things. First, I came down here today to meet with the county executive, who, as he said, has been a partner with me for a very long time. I reminded Denny this morning that I sat in the office where I just sat with him 7 years ago as a candidate for governor, seeking his support and talking to him about the very same issues that we're talking about today. About the inability or unwillingness of Atlantic City to manage its own affairs, about the debt that it was running up, about the crisis that the city was going to face at some point. And one of the things he said to me was, I hope if you're elected governor that you and I are going to be able to fix this problem together. And so I came down here today to get an update from him personally as to how he sees the current situation, to talk to him about my point of view, and to let him know, and I want to let all of you know this, that when this takeover bill is passed, and it will be, I am going to work with the county executive to determine exactly what needs to be done in Atlantic City and what ways the county can help. We are not going to foist anything upon the county that the county is unwilling to take on. And so there's been lots of conversation by lots of people who are not in positions of decision making, but all kinds of suggestions they have about what they want the county to take over. Let me be clear. I'm going to be guided by the county executive in what things this county can operate more effectively, efficiently, and inexpensively than what's happening currently in the city. And so anyone who's throwing out things about county police force or anything else in that regard is just trying to inflame the situation and has no basis in fact for making those claims. In fact, what I want to do with the takeover legislation passed is to make decisions in a business-like manner, which is not the way these decisions have been made. Why do I say that? The city's failed to dissolve the Municipal Utility Authority and replace it with an alternative that can generate more revenue for the city. The council's listed the matter 3 times in the last year and failed to approve it each time. I know that the county has previously expressed, because the county executive has expressed it to me, his willingness to have the county keep the Utilities Authority in public hands and to operate it more efficiently, more effectively, and to help the city. This has been refused, and one needs to wonder whether or not the reason it's been refused is because folks are more concerned about who's employed at the Utilities Authority and how much money they're making and what kind of benefits they're getting than they are about helping the city out of this problem. Cities fail to pursue any outsourcing of even basic municipal services, such as park or playground operation, grass cutting, field maintenance, even trash collection, which the county does for many, many other municipalities in this county and saves money for those municipalities. The city refuses to engage in that. They haven't entered in any shared services agreements with the county for recycling pickup, health services, tax collection functions, or otherwise. All things that I think the county would be willing to consider, since the county provides those services for many other municipalities. The city hasn't addressed the rich benefits and the salaries of their various departments, police, fire, and others. City has not considered regionalization of the fire department. After submitting and receiving approval for a layoff plan, it was abruptly canceled. The city has not developed an overall strategic plan for land use and for redevelopment. The city's been unable to develop a plan to conserve cash or address public safety and services issues as the days wind down and it runs out of money. By refusing to act on the intervention bill, these are the types of public employee excesses that would remain on the books and protected. And I find it fascinating today. I see the AFL-CIO sent out a message saying that we're attempting to protect bondholders and go after city employees. Every press conference I've had, I've talked about the fact that I want the authority to negotiate with the bondholders and with the casinos who are owed money. But that I'm not going to do that without also having the public sector union workers have to also contribute to the sacrifices being made in the city. The AFL this morning says the bondholders, my Wall Street friends, will be left untouched. More lies from the city administration and their union bosses. That's exactly what's going on. 119 city employees have salaries over $100,000. 119 city employees. I wonder if the 39,000 people in Atlantic City feel good about the fact that they're paying for 119 people to make six-figure salaries in the public sector. In 2015 alone, Atlantic City paid out a staggering $6.6 million in terminal leave payments to public employees. Terminal leave sounds so ugly. Let's call it what it is. It's a boat check. It's a check for these public employees to buy their boats once they've been retired. And I'll tell you, it seems to me that public employees in Atlantic City never get sick. These people have more sick days accumulated over their careers than public employees have seen anywhere else in the state. If you want to be healthy, apparently, come get a public sector job in Atlantic City, because you'll never be sick. $320,000 is about to be paid out to the deputy fire chief, and another $320,000 to the deputy police chief alone. More than $700,000 is already owed and accumulated, including that $640,000 already in 2016, and we're only at April 6th. Only at April 6th, already $700,000. It's unconscionable for taxpayers to be writing checks for a person who, over just a 21-year career, managed to amass 3,276 sick hours and 960 vacation hours. The Lou Gehrig of public employment, apparently. Part-time council members receive $300,000 in salary while they're city craters. 5 council members still receive taxpayer-funded health benefits, and those benefits are among the most expensive and rich. In fact, they're so rich that the state of New Jersey eliminated that plan. For state workers, NJ Direct 10, a wildly overexpensive and generous plan that's at the expense of the taxpayers. If we just switch to NJ Direct 15, which by the way is characterized by the Obama administration as a platinum level plan under Obamacare, It would generate over $1 million in annual savings for the cities. The city continues to take property tax collections that should rightfully belong to the school children of Atlantic City and use them to fund their city operations. We are in court now to attempt to prevent that from this Friday. And the school administrator, the business administrator in the school district has said they can no longer put up with the way the city is withholding money from them and their operation. So that's why we filed suit. Atlantic City's finances are in such disrepair because of this local waste and mismanagement and failure to lead that Moody's this week downgraded the city's credit to the level of Puerto Rico. Reports just yesterday from financial analysts across that industry confirmed what the stakes are if the speaker refuses to act. Atlantic City is running out of money. It will run out of money. It will not make its debt payments. And that negative spillover will go on to other New Jersey cities across the state. Newark, Jersey City, Patterson, Camden, Union City, Trenton will all face potential downgrades of their debt because of the failure to lead in Atlantic City and the failure to stand up for this iconic city. To eliminate the remaining forecasted deficits and to bring the budget into structural balance means making tough choices. It's why I didn't sign the pilot legislation in January and why the pilot bill that's currently pending before the legislature is not a fix on its own, and it will not be signed by me if it is sent to me without the exact legislation passed by the Senate on intervention in the city. If I'd signed that original pilot in January, or even if I'd signed the existing pilot alone and no fundamental changes were made to the city's budget and operations, Atlantic City would still immediately face a $23 million budget deficit. Hardly what you call success. Next year that grows to $32 million, it'll hit $35 million by 2020, and that's before factoring in any solution to the significant debt problems. They owe Borgata $150 million, they owe $40 million to MGM. The court ruled against them again just yesterday on the Borgata situation. The clock is ticking there. They owe $39 million in deferred pension and health benefit payments, which the city has not paid since 2014. Unless the state steps in and deals with the cost side of the equation, this problem will not be magically resolved by another financial band-aid from the taxpayers of New Jersey. And I, as governor, will not permit it to happen. There's been some conversation in the last couple of days about why I haven't spoken to the mayor since January. Let me be really specific about that. I spent hours on the phone with the mayor in January from New Hampshire and the Senate president negotiating an agreement. The mayor called me and told me he agreed to the deal. We went over it specifically. He said he wasn't happy, but he knew that this is what he needed to do. I then came back to New Jersey from New Hampshire, met with the Senate president, formalized the deal with him, and as you all remember, held a press conference in the governor's outer office with the Senate president and the mayor saying he agreed to the deal, only to then renege on his promise. I cannot make agreements with people who can't keep their word. And this, unlike the word that the speaker gave to me and the Senate president behind closed doors, when he said he would post the bill, the intervention bill, for a vote. For this, you don't have to rely upon me and the Senate president for whether or not the mayor agreed to the deal. The mayor stood behind a podium, behind microphones, in front of cameras, and said he agreed to the deal, and shook hands with me and the Senate president in front of the entire state of New Jersey. I don't know what you call that. You all can write it and characterize it however you like. But what I know is, when I make a deal with someone, I keep it. And if the political winds blow in a different direction, then you need to withstand those winds. The mayor has decided not to. And at the same time, is putting his city, an iconic, historic city in this country, at risk, and is putting the creditworthiness of a number of other cities in the state of New Jersey at risk at the same time. Let's once again deal with the Speaker's claims that I already have the authority to do this. Ridiculous. I've been accused of many things by many people over the course of my career as governor and U.S. attorney. I've never been accused of having power and not using it. The Speaker says we don't need a takeover bill. Well, without the takeover, the state can't do the following. We can't end the practice of granting excessive terminal leave pay to non-unionized employees who receive those boat checks while no longer working for the city. We can't achieve significant cost savings by modernizing and outsourcing waste hauling services. We can't eliminate Atlantic City's Platinum Plus health insurance plan that was done away with for active state workers nearly 20 years ago. We can't be directly involved in the labor management of the city. Instead, leaving it to city officials who have continued to permit overly generous coverage, grossly excessive and out-of-touch terminal leave, and 14% rank differentials that exceed any normal police force in this state. We can't take steps that may be necessary to renegotiate with the city's public sector unions to get those exorbitant costs under control. New collective bargaining agreements that the Assembly Speaker claims that our office has the authority to approve are still subject to arbitration awards, and the Speaker blatantly misquotes the law when he states that the local finance board can authorize the fixing of hours and terms of employment for all municipal employees. He conveniently cuts off the rest of the sentence, which states that any changes are still constrained by existing labor agreements. Guess he just got so excited he stopped reading before he got to the end of the statute. We can't eliminate health benefits for council members. That would save 6 figures. Nor in the salaries. That would save another $300,000 a year. We can't execute on a plan to dissolve the Municipal Utilities Authority and to maximize the value of it for taxpayers, while, as an option, keeping it in public hands in Atlantic County. And we can't negotiate a settlement with Borgata, MGM, or any of the bondholders using state bargaining power, because that lies with the city. These are just some of the powers that the state can exercise only if the takeover bill is passed, and these are the seminal things that need to be done in order to fix it. I end with this. I said this yesterday in Trenton, I'll repeat it again today. I have no interest in doing this job. And quite frankly, I don't think the county executive does either after our conversation. Both of us ran for the jobs we wanted. If either one of us wanted to be mayor of Atlantic City, I'm sure we would have run for it. We chose to run for the positions we ran for. But he has a responsibility to the people of Atlantic County, and I have a broader responsibility to the people of New Jersey. This job needs to be done. The Speaker needs to stop playing politics. The clock is ticking. And the people of Atlantic City deserve better. The people of Atlantic County deserve much better. Tens of millions of dollars have had to be refunded out of the county coffers over the last number of years because of the awful assessment history by Atlantic City. It not only affects the taxpayers of Atlantic City, it attacks the broader taxpayers of Atlantic County. And then that's left to the county executive and the freeholders to have to figure out how they fill those holes. Yet they've done it because they've been willing to make the hard choices that you need to make when you have responsibility in government. The city's been unwilling to do that. I, for one, am not going to stand by and let this continue to happen, not on my watch. And so, I regret I have to do this, but just remember who the other folks who oppose this are standing with. They're standing with people who are receiving excessive pay. They're standing with people who are making excessive health benefits part of their life. They're also, by the way, interestingly, they don't oppose any of the rest of the takeover. I mean, think about this. They're not saying, we don't want the state to take over the city. All they're saying now is, we just don't want the state to be able to deal with the public sector unions. The Speaker has not objected to one other part of the takeover bill, and you heard all of the authority that we would have in the takeover bill. He hasn't objected to one piece of that. So let's put aside this idea of, democracy. The people of Atlantic City were abandoned by their local officials a long time ago. You don't get in this kind of shape with a $100 million deficit annually and $500 million in debt if you're representing the interests of the people who pay the bills. So we understand exactly what this is. The Speaker does not object to the state coming in and taking over significant responsibility. Just don't hurt his political friends. This is about a much bigger issue, everybody. This is about the full faith and credit of New Jersey's cities. Atlantic City will just be the beginning. We have a plan to fix it and to stop the harm. We need to implement that plan right away. I am, once again, very thankful to the county executive for his friendship and his partnership and his willingness to work with me. Like he said, we don't agree on everything, and we haven't agreed on everything over the years. But what we have always agreed on is responsible government. Is government that represents the people who elected us and puts their interests first ahead of the interests of others. So I appreciate Denny hosting me and giving me a briefing this morning. And I have time to take a few questions for folks if you have them. Matt?
Governor, so just to be clear, with Moody's latest report, they said, not the latest downgrade, but what they're warning about with other cities is because of the state's posture, the administration's posture. So it's in your authority for other cities. I mean, would you be willing to do that, or are they getting?
It's not the administration's posture. Moody, excuse me. You asked the question, I get to give the answer. Moody's said, previous to this, that if the takeover bill and the pilot bill were passed, that's what they would advise, and that would end the crisis. That's the administration's position. Pass the takeover bill, pass the pilot bill. Pass them as the Senate passed them, I will sign them. The crisis will end from a credit perspective. And so that's the administration's position. And I'm not going to provide anything beyond that. What I'm going to do is get this job done first. And Moody's has said, if we sign the takeover bill and we sign the pilot bill, that would ease their concerns. And the reason they said that is because it gives the governor sufficient authority to fix the problem, and they have confidence in the fact that this governor would fix the problem.
Governor.
Michael.
Here, whether Denny Levinson is agreeing to a takeover. He wants the pilot passed. You have the condition that the pilot only passes if the takeover happens. Can I ask you and the county to each address whether you have a supporter on the takeover in the county executive?
I'll let the county executive speak first, Michael.
All right.
So a good question about him.
Can you step up to the mic, Denny? Do you support the takeover?
I didn't have a quizzical look on my face standing next to the governor, did I?
It's dangerous if you do. Be careful. You'll be on Jimmy Fallon pretty soon.
I kept changing my expressions. So. Go ahead, Michael.
What's your position on the state taking over most of the functions of Atlantic City government?
My position is the same as it's always been. We will be cooperative. I think Franklin Roosevelt put it very succinctly prior to World War II and our entrance, that if your neighbor's house is on fire, what's wrong with lending them a fire hose? And that's where we are. We want to help. We do believe there are certain functions that we can help out with. We collect trash in 17 other municipalities. For those of you, I don't want to sound condescending, for those of you that don't know, there's 20 counties. We collect trash in 17. We collect recyclables in 20 of them. We have a county health department that services 22 of the 23 municipalities. So there are functions that we could assume quite easily. And I just want to make this very, very clear. This will not be on the backs of the county taxpayer. This will be, a check has to come along with that. We can take over those functions, but they have to be paid for. And we are we enthusiastic about doing it? Well, like I said, we want to cooperate. And under the circumstances with the pilot bill, to answer that question, that according to the legislation, that we must assume certain responsibilities for us to get the percentage which the governor has guaranteed to us, 13.5%. I would like to add that the state senator made a comment that, like the Atlantic City Police Force. Now, he used that as an example. I want to make that very clear. That is not in our future. The difference between Camden County and Atlantic County is Camden County wanted that to occur. Atlantic County does not. So does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Governor, the mayor says that the schedule for payments was set up by state-appointed monitors. It wasn't any sort of wrongdoing on the part of the city purposefully. That it was a state monitor decision. Is that your knowledge?
It was not
Okay.
a state monitor decision. It was a city decision which the state monitor permitted, as long as they had the money to pay for it. The difference here is if they make a payroll payment on Friday, they will not have the money to make the school payment by April 15th. So we are looking into the future and seeing that they have, unless there's some magic cash stream that the mayor hasn't told anybody about, as he's got some money in the seat cushions over at City Hall, he will not have the money to make the school payment. We believe the school payment is more important than the payroll payment. That's the difference. It was not our decision to let him make the payments late. It was his request. And the monitor approved that request as long as the cash flow chart showed that he would have the money to make the payment by the 15th of the month. The cash flow charts now show he will not have the money to make the payment by the 15th of the month, so he needs to make it now.
Follow-up to that, does the monitor have the authority to change the payment schedule?
No. I mean, not now, and we don't, again, that's why, the mayor runs around saying everything was authorized by us. As I just explained to you, we don't have the ability to make him do anything. All we can do is block. And that's why the speaker's contention that we have all the authority we do now is ridiculous. All we can do under the state monitoring system is stop them from doing certain new things, not fix all the old problems. And I can't force him. If I could force him to make the school payment today, why would I go to court? I would just tell him make the payment. I can't do that. That's why I went to court. I mean, listen, the mayor is an articulate guy, and now he's asking for prayer and all the rest of it. It's a wonderful thing. He's a great guy. He has no idea what he's talking about. Zero idea of what he's talking about. And so, if he's telling you we could tell them to make the payment, then why would I go ask a judge to do it? It would save me the time of the Attorney General's office and the aggravation of answering the question. I would just say, make the payment. I can't do that. I need a judge to tell him to make the payment. And that's what we've asked the judge to do.
What will be the mechanism for, Mr. Levinson said that 13.5% will now be guaranteed. Will we finally see it in writing somewhere?
It's in the legislation. It's already in the legislation.
But it's in the summary, it's not in the.
It's in the legislation.
bill
It's
itself.
all part of the bill. It's in the legislation.
So
and-
nothing new in terms of.
No, except that, Denny and I sat across from each other, and I said, Denny, don't worry about it. It's in the bill, and I'm gonna make sure it happens. That's it. And by the way, unlike dealing with the mayor, Denny knows that if I tell him it's gonna happen, it's gonna happen. And he's had that experience over the last 6.5 years.
We also have a few witnesses.
Yeah, a few.
Yeah.
Well, I had a whole bunch of witnesses in Trenton that didn't constrain the mayor from doing a 180, yeah.
Governor, you and Mayor Guardian have both had lengthy press conferences over the past several weeks, and you've made the effort to drive the hour and a half from Trenton today. Why not meet with Mayor Guardian face to face?
Because there's no purpose in meeting with a liar.
If the city totally runs out of money, but the takeover bill still isn't passed, will you do anything to ensure that the schools stay open, the basic services like trash are still collected?
The bill's gonna be passed.
But if it's not passed?
And if the sun doesn't come up tomorrow, we got other problems too. I'm not into answering your hypotheticals. Yeah.
In your past few press conferences, you've used lifeguard pensions as an example of wasteful spending. But in the Lavin report from January, doesn't that seem to indicate that those payments are required by the state?
There is a statute that covers lifeguard pensions. This is something that he's never come to the state and asked us to relieve him of that responsibility. And that's something that we could work on if we had the takeover legislation.
Atlantic City has big bond payments due in May. With that money, is the state willing to make those payments?
No.
So, the mayor has maintained that, excuse me, that the agreement that you and he had on the phone, is not what happened in the legislation. So,
We outlined, I don't remember if you were there or not that day. We outlined exactly what the authorities would be that day in the press conference with me and the Senate President and the mayor. Listen, he's decided he wants to do something different. But he had a deal. There's no reason the Senate President would pass legislation that he knew the mayor objected to after coming to an agreement with him. Nor would I continue to say that we had an agreement. And you saw him stand up there and say we had an agreement. What do you, listen, he's got to admit what it means. You either got to claim the deal was different, or he's got to admit he's lying. Given those two choices, you see the choice he's made.
With the MUA, you want it sold to the county to keep in public hands?
I didn't say that.
Okay, no, that's why I'm just
I
asking.
didn't say that. I said that the county executive has expressed a willingness to have that conversation, and I believe it's an option we could pursue. But again, in the context of a takeover, we're going to make the decisions that are in the best interest of the taxpayers of Atlantic City and Atlantic County. And so we'd have to sit down with the county executive, talk about the value of the MUA, how all that would work, and make sure that it worked for Atlantic County. Because as the county executive made very clear, the functions that they would take over, assume he includes the MUA in that, would not be on the back of the taxpayers of the rest of Atlantic County. And so it has to be a deal that makes sense for the Atlantic City taxpayer, for the Atlantic County taxpayer, and that represents fair value for the asset. And so, unlike the way decisions are made now based upon who's on the payroll and how much they get in salary and whose health benefits they get, because that's what's happening now. We know that. We know, and you know, if you cover this, that what's being protected here are the folks who are being employed at the MUA. And the fear that if it went to the county or if it went private, that those people would no longer have their sweetheart jobs and their great benefits. It's ugly, smelly politics. So would I guarantee you that if the state takeover occurred, that we would dissolve the Municipal Utilities Authority and sell it to the county? No. The same way I don't think the county executive would stand up here now and say he guarantees he's going to take it. If there was some offer made to him that was not in the interest of Atlantic County, I know him. He'd say, take a walk. I'll see you later.
May I say this?
Yeah, sure.
First of all, we don't know the value of the MUA. And we don't know the condition of the pumping stations or the pipes that come into it. That all has to be evaluated. And when we did meet, we did have a meeting here in the county office building. Chairman Formica was there, Freeholder Corsi was there, President Small was there, the mayor was there, Councilman Shabazz was there, my staff was there, and we had at least an agreement that my administrator would talk to the city administrator about moving this along. But we also made certain promises that if the county does assume the Atlantic City MUA, that it would remain in public hands rather than private hands, and that we would be willing, once Atlantic City gets on their feet, that we would put a reverter in there to give it back to the city itself. So let me make that clear about the Atlantic City MUA. That was what we put on the table, and the next day things seemed to change a bit. And we haven't heard since what our role would be with the city of Atlantic City with the MUA. Does that answer?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, Michael.
Two questions. Your office is currently getting a new chief of staff, that Gia is leaving and Amy Kradich is taking over. Can you discuss why the change?
Yeah, Regina's been with me for 6.5 years, really 7.5 if you count. She joined the campaign as the co-director of policy in 2009 with Commissioner Martin. And she's had a daughter graduate from college, and they're moving into a different phase of their life, and she wants to go back to the private sector. And so Regina and I have been talking about this for a little while. And so now seems to be the appropriate time to do it for her and her family. And I cannot thank her enough for the extraordinary service that she's provided me over the last 7.5 years. That's a long time to be with one person and to be in public life. She's done a great job. Amy Craddock's my Deputy Chief of Staff now for policy. And Amy has been in state government for over 20 years. For various administrations at the DEP and then over to the governor's office when I became governor. And so I'm looking forward to Amy taking over as chief of staff. She's a wonderfully competent, experienced person, and I'm really lucky to have the opportunity to have her being willing to take the job and to do it for the rest of the administration.
Back to the Atlantic City issue, you referred to that AFL-CIO letter today. There's a kind of night and day aspect to this story when they start talking about all the cuts that have been made in the fire department, going from 272 positions to 147 officer positions reduced 32%, salaries reduced 46%, a 25% reduction in manpower in the police department.
And they still have 110 more police officers than Union City, with half the population. They still get to the top step in the salary scale in half the amount of time that almost any other police force does in the state.
Aren't they making strides in the direction you want them to
Michael,
go?
they have a $100 million annual deficit. You want to give them, a prize for that? Please. The AFL-CIO has no idea what they're talking about. They're just protecting the union interests. That's all they're doing. And believe me, if I had members getting that kind of pay and those kind of benefits, man, I'd try to protect them too. That's their job. But they're dead wrong. And I'm here to protect the taxpayers who are paying the bills and to protect the credit of New Jersey cities, which Atlantic City is about to put into ruin. I'm not going to let it happen.
Governor, the mayor points out, he pointed out the other day about state aid. He said the governor, quote, shorted us $33.5 million that we were told to put in our budget by state monitors. And also he points out that he says the city receives $1,500 per resident from the state, while Camden gets $6,000 per resident.
The mayor's math and his understanding match his management capabilities. Matt?
Governor, so kind of related to Elise's question, would you draw such a hard line with not kind of backing the bonds or coming in to rescue the bonds with other cities in?
Matt, I'm not going to get into answering your hypotheticals. I mean, excuse me, it is a dangerous proposition for the person who's the chief executive of a state to start answering your hypotheticals as much, because the markets will listen to that and will react to it. I'm not getting into answering your hypotheticals about other cities. I know you're very interested in it. Read what Moody's says about what will happen to other cities. That's their opinion. That's what I'm basing my actions on. And I just can't, Matt. It's not responsible for me to get into answering the hypotheticals. Yes, sir.
As a taxpayer, Atlantic City, fourth-generation taxpayer.
Are you part of the press?
No, sir, I'm not.
I'm sorry. I'm taking your question then. Thank you very much. Next.
Governor, you've talked a lot about salaries, but your own agency in Atlantic City, the CRDA, pays its executive more than the police chief, more than the governor, pays $225,000 a year and has a $5 million payroll. Does that concern you? And also,
CRDA is not $100 million in debt, in deficit annually. The CRDA does not have nearly $500 million in debt. And I would not be down here talking about Atlantic City's salaries if they could manage their city. That's the problem. You see, what the mayor wants to do is compare apples and oranges. If a responsible agency or government, I have no idea what the salaries are in the Atlantic County government. Not a clue. You know why I don't know? Because he's running the government in a responsible way that doesn't run a deficit every year, and he doesn't ask the taxpayers of the state to bail him out. The minute you put yourself in a position where you cannot responsibly manage your credit, and you cannot responsibly manage your payroll, and you cannot responsibly manage the revenues, then you put yourself in a position to have every action and decision you've made scrutinized. So from the CRDA perspective, they're managing their operations just fine. They're not managing it to a deficit. They're providing value added to the city and to the region, and they're paying competitive prices for the type of people that they need to attract to do those jobs. If they were in debt and in deficit, then I would be coming to Mr. Palmieri and saying to him, okay, what are we gonna do here to fix this problem? As long as he continues to run the operation in a way that makes value added and balances the books, I have delegated to him the responsibility, along with the board of the CRDA, to make those decisions. Those decisions were delegated by the people of Atlantic City to the mayor and to the council, and they have miserably failed. And that's why their actions are being scrutinized now. So let's not play around with the apples and oranges thing.
Governor,
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Speaker Prieto has been reported as planning to introduce some sort of alternative to the takeover bill you like that includes benchmarks that the city would have to meet before the state could come in. Why do you support that idea? Why or why not?
There's no time left. They're out of money. There are very obvious benchmarks for governments to meet, like balance your budget. Pay revenues that you collect to the people who are entitled to them. Don't overpay for services. Don't employ people who serve no function. Outsource things that make sense to outsource. These are benchmarks that are common sense benchmarks for every government. They've failed every one of them. So now what we're supposed to do, give them another credit card for the next, what, 90 days, 180 days, 365 days? How long do we wait for them to act responsibly and make hard choices? Seems to me there's more people concerned about running for mayor than there are in saving the city. Maybe they should take a deep breath and save the city first.
I'd like to retract my statement. I am a member of the media.
You just took his card and you're holding it. Stop it.
Governor,
Next.
Thank you. Governor, your executive order that put the emergency managers in place specifically gave them the authority to negotiate with the stakeholders to renegotiate the city's debt, and they hired a bankruptcy judge, and they had that authority. You gave it to them.
We don't have the legal authority to force it. We don't have I don't understand why you don't understand this.
Well, did they reach an agreement that someone turned down?
No, we don't have the legal authority to enforce it, so they don't negotiate with people who can't close a deal. If I sent you in to negotiate with the bondholders today, and you don't have the legal authority to shake their hand and say deal, you think they're going to negotiate with you?
So the authority you gave them in the executive order was
the authority was merely me authorizing them to engage in conversations. The city council and the mayor were the only people who had the authority to agree to a deal.
So what happened with those negotiations? And why would this be? Let me just say for a second, that question is so stupid that it's hard to even imagine that you could ask it. If the negotiations went well, would we be standing here? So what will be different
Next
now?
question.
Governor.
Because I have the authority to do it.
Governor.
I have the authority to make the deal. Yes, sir, back there.
Are you concerned with the public perception that Atlantic City is, quote, shut down?
Yeah.
What does that tell the world?
I am concerned with it. That's why I'm trying to prevent it.
What does that tell the world this weekend?
Well, it's certainly open this weekend. And if the council passes their resolution to go to a kick the can down the road 28-day payroll period, then they will have effectively kicked the can down the road from this weekend. But by the way, Atlantic City's not shut down. City Hall's shut down. I doubt that many people come to Atlantic City to go to City Hall.
That's not what they do. Being asked, or the jitney's running. Casinos are being asked.
I understand they're being asked, and I'm telling people that all those things are running. Listen, either ask a question that you really mean or don't, okay? You asked me if I'm concerned about the perception. I am. But that doesn't mean the perception is the reality. The reality is that everything will be functioning in Atlantic City this weekend. So that's the reality. Am I concerned about the perception? Of course I'm concerned about the perception. If I wasn't, I wouldn't be engaged in this. I'd be doing other things with the other 565 municipalities in the state.
Governor.
Yes, sir.
Governor, the Moody's report from this morning says that your comments, quote, suggest the state may have reached the point of viewing a default as a desirable outcome. Is that not true?
It's not true. No. The desirable outcome is the passing of the takeover legislation and the pilot bill. That is the desirable outcome. And that's the one I want.
But desirable to bankruptcy?
Next.
Desirable to...
How does it...
No, desirable. Desirable, what do you prefer?
How do you expect the students that's going to college here and trying to stay here and live to maintain in this crisis that's going on and to continuously pursue their education to stay in this area without moving out and transferring to another college in a different market?
Their schools are open. They should go to class and do their work. That's what they should do. Matt?
Governor, any plans to campaign in New York ahead of the primary with Donald Trump?
I'm a little busy at the moment. Next.
Can you address this part of the AFL-CIO statement? Residents of this Atlantic City are also in the crosshairs. Governor wants to take the power to take the rights of city citizens to vote in binding referendums.
We're taking over the functions of the city. And if they were going to do something, that is like the most far-fetched thing, because you know what it takes to get a referendum on the ballot and get it to be effective and binding. The fact is, though, if they were going to try to pass a referendum that was going to countermand what the state was doing after we took it over, yeah, I'd have a problem with that. The fact is that, you know, right now the people of the city couldn't be more ill-served than they've been. Their city is at the precipice of having no money. Let us not be concerned with the niceties of referenda politics when you've got no money. They wouldn't have the money to print the ballots to put the referendum on. So, you know, let's be real about what we're dealing with here. I mean, you know, the mayor sits around and talks about, you know, scenarios that are like how many angels can dance on the head of a pin. It's ridiculous. He has no money. He can extend payroll periods, whatever else. I showed you the cash flow charts. He has no money. And the people of the state of New Jersey are tired of bailing him out. And what we want to do is to fix the problems. He and the council have shown themselves either unwilling or unable to fix the problem. We need to send someone in who can, and have them have the authority they need to be able to do it, to effectuate negotiations with everybody, bondholders, casinos, public sector unions, other governments. We need the authority to be able to do that. If I sit with Denny and I make him a deal on his federal tax return for this year, he's going to look at me and say, that sounds like a good deal to me, Governor, but what authority do you have to make that deal? I mean, this is not hard to understand. We need the authority to do this. Yes, sir?
Yeah, I wanted to ask about your argument about the other cities being affected, their credit worthiness.
It's not my argument, it's Moody's argument.
No, I understand, but
No, it's Moody's argument, not my argument.
But why isn't it better for the people of Atlantic City that the city file for bankruptcy? Why? I understand why it's not better for the other cities in the state.
Because
but why
their
isn't it better
credit worthiness will be even further destroyed by that action, when that can be avoided by having the pilot bill, which will give them a stable, knowable level of tax revenue without the risk of further appeals diminishing it, and give the state the authority to make the decisions that are necessary to put them back on stable governmental footing. That's certainly better than handing it over to a bankruptcy judge and a bankruptcy trustee, and the effect that that would have on their credit. This would help Atlantic City's credit, not hurt it. Insolvency hurts their credit. It's pretty simple.
Well, they're not in a borrowing position now anyway. I mean, they can't, they have.
They're not in a bill-paying position. Their credit can go lower. Do you think they're at the lowest credit level?
No.
Okay, so thank you. Next.
Yeah, it's the county's understanding that they'd like to consider taking over the health department in the city, but it's the county's understanding that they would have to pay the same salaries if they took over. There's a state law that requires them to pay the same salaries that the city's now paying, and the city pays its health department workers a lot more than the county pays. Would you push for a law to change that state law?
We would have the ability to address that issue under the takeover law. Yeah.
Hi, the mayor has talked a lot about recently Geppettos and Pinocchios, and there's been some concern locally about who was included in some of these meetings, including George Norcross. I was just wondering, what influence has George Norcross had on these negotiations, and what role do you see him playing in the future of the
He said none on me.
Is there anything that Mayor Guardian can do on his own to try and avert this, to end this crisis, or is he completely tied at this point to Vincent Prieto?
You have to ask Mayor Guardian that.
From your standpoint.
I'm sure he'll be having a press conference moments after I'm finished. So you can ask him that. I have no idea.
Question for the county executive.
If you want to.
Are you on record as favoring bankruptcy as an option?
I'm on record by saying that it should not be removed from the table. I believe that if bankruptcy were an alternative, it would certainly bring the creditors a little quicker to the table. After all, if you know you're going to get 100 cents on the dollar, why negotiate? And I would use it as a bargaining tool, and I'm not positive that it is completely out of the question, even to this point. If we get no cooperation, if we end up in impasse, I don't know where we go, and may I also add that since the holdup on this legislation is Speaker Prieto not wanting to touch the collective bargaining contracts. He made them sacred. If the city does file for bankruptcy, they're all null and void anyway. So under the circumstances, I think everyone has to realize this does loom large. And if we do end up in impasse, whether that would be alternative. And you know, I'm not even positive if it is the right way to go. I don't think it's been studied, and how that will have effect on the city itself. But understand this, no other city in this state can say that they lost 65% of their value in such a short period of time. So there is some uniqueness in Atlantic City. But if it could be done without filing for bankruptcy, which by the way could not be done by the city unilaterally, must be okayed by the state of New Jersey. So you're asking me what I think. I do believe that that has to be in the back of the mind of the creditors. And remember also that that Borgata debt is unsecured. That also has to be in the back of their minds. Yes.
Can I ask one more question to the
Sure,
Chair and
yeah,
Executive?
sure.
Given the amount of money that's collected for the state in hotel taxes, restaurant taxes from Atlantic City, and given the fact that they are in such an extraordinary situation of devaluation of their property tax base in such a small amount of time, do you think it would be a good part, a good gesture, or a good move by the state to bring back some of that money that was sent out of Atlantic City back to Atlantic City, given the just uniqueness of their situation and the direness of the situation with the tax base?
Well, the answer is, look, if it was up to me, it would have all stayed in Atlantic City. You know, whether we were, I mean, I love Yogi Berra, but whether I would have built a museum to him in Montclair is questionable. Whether I would have put $10 million of CRETA money into a exclusive girls' school up in where Bergen County, whatever it was, for so there are some questionable things that have been done in the past, and most certainly had that money been put into Atlantic City itself and the infrastructure in Atlantic City, and to turn it into a destination first-class resort during this last 40 years. But no one asked me at the time, and if they did, I'm not positive they would have followed my lead. After all, the whole state of New Jersey voted for Atlantic City to exclusively have gaming, and everyone had wanted a piece of that pie.
Governor, Paul Sarlo said yesterday that that the Democrats in the Senate would consider start talking about a tax exemption for charitable contributions as part of a TTF deal. Does that move closer to your idea of tax fairness?
Let's see.
Governor, could this be a blueprint for takeovers of other municipalities?
You think I'm enjoying this? I mean, seriously, you think this is like I'm enjoying this? You think I'd like to do this like 3, 4, 5 more times? Absolutely not. This is a last resort. And 5 years ago, I agreed to legislation that would try to help Atlantic City avoid this day. But that legislation left in the hands of the city exclusively the right to govern themselves and make decisions regarding city government. In the 5 years since, we've seen non-gaming revenue go up. We've seen new attractions, new shopping built here, lots of private sector investment. County executive rightly put, we're the 3rd largest city for gaming in America. Any state right now would be willing to take what Atlantic City has from the perspective of gaming revenue and attractions here. It's better than any other state in the country except Nevada. And so, you know, my point is, we tried to do this another way 5 years ago. It's not like, you know, this was my first crack at this. In the fall of 2010, I agreed to legislation that gave Atlantic City 5 years of exclusivity on gaming to hold off North Jersey gaming. Remember, when I came into office, these same North Jersey legislators, like Vincent Prieto and others, wanted North Jersey gaming then. I said absolutely not and refused, and got a negotiation with the legislature, North and South Jersey, to agree on another 5 years of exclusivity minimum for gaming in Atlantic City. And at the same time brought significant state resources to bear on the Boardwalk District and on other issues and problems that were here in Atlantic City. And I did all of that without asking for a lick of authority from the city government. But we told them, you need to get your affairs in order. It was a different mayor back then. We're now on our second mayor and council that haven't done their job, Matt. So no, this is not a blueprint for that. And in fact, I would not want to do it with any other municipality, nor would I recommend to other governors that you look for this as like a, second job. It's not what I want, but I've got no choice. I've got to worry about the entire state and Atlantic City at the same time. If I'm going to be responsible, I want the authority. You don't want to give me the authority, then whatever is going to happen is going to happen. I can take two more, then I got to go. Harry?
Thanks, Governor. Right now, you're willing to sign the piece of legislation that the Senate President, and the votes are there for that piece of legislation. You say you will sign it as it is written, no changes. The Assembly Speaker will not even present that. And we know loud and clear that he said he would at least present it, even if he couldn't, for political reasons, if he couldn't vote for it. Where's the finish line?
The finish line's got to be those two bills landing on my desk, Harry. There's no other way to do this. Again, for the principle that I just stated in talking to Matt, which is, if I'm going to be given the responsibility, I have to have the authority. And the county executive just spoke about this in his remarks. He says, if I'm going to be given certain responsibility, the check's got to come with it. I'm not going to put it on the back of the taxpayer. I totally agree with him. He's acting responsibly. I want to do the same thing. You want to give me the responsibility for fixing Atlantic City? I am willing to undertake it. But I am not willing to undertake it with one hand tied behind my back. Not willing to undertake it with one set of folks being held as sacrosanct. And as the county executive rightfully pointed out, and I've said this before, this goes to bankruptcy, the collective bargaining agreements are null and void anyway. So what's the speaker think he's protecting here? Exactly. So the speaker would rather have a bankruptcy trustee decide rather than the governor, who's been elected by all the people of the state. He'd rather have a bankruptcy trustee appointed by a bankruptcy judge who's been elected by no one and is accountable to no one make these decisions? You want to talk about anti-democratic, small d. That's what that is. So, so much of this conversation being generated by the mayor and the speaker is like Alice in Wonderland. You head into this vortex. As I was flying in here today, I was thinking to myself, I'm going to the land where right now up is down and down is up. And that common sense has taken a leave of absence. When you do not have the money to pay your bills, and you've borrowed $500 million to pay previous bills, and you're in debt another $200 million to people whose money you stole by wrongfully assessing the taxes on their property, and they want it back. For you then to say, well, what's the rush? What's the problem? And why don't you trust me to fix the problem? That's what they're asking?
So what would it take over look like?
Am I in the middle of an answer?
What?
Am I in the middle of an answer?
I'm
Or
sorry.
I simply cannot understand why people can't see in this city that the finish line is here. And you're either going to cross it and head into a time of greater stability and prosperity, or you're going to go off a cliff. It's one or the other.
And that's why I raised it, because we're 2 days, if there's a judicial decision, or no more than a month or so away from absolute, a city that is broke following up, if you do not get the pilot legislation and the takeover bill together unchanged, you've also gone on record to say that you will oppose the ballot question. Now that you're here in Atlantic City, and I think everybody appreciates that today.
That's a fair trade-off as far as I'm
Well,
concerned.
a lot of people are happy to hear that, Dennis. But your thoughts about that, if it stays as it is, you're going to oppose the ballot question?
Yes, said it, that's what I mean. And you know, and it's been a lot of years, as you know, of negotiation and discussion and trying to bring together North Jersey and South Jersey interests, which is often an interesting challenge for a governor. And that's why I stood so firmly when I first became governor about a 5-year moratorium on any consideration of North Jersey gaming, because I wanted to give Atlantic City the opportunity to breathe, to get its affairs in order, to get more private sector investment here. And we've seen that. We've seen that even in light of the competition that the county executive laid out that was coming from Pennsylvania. We were able to get significant non-gaming capital investment from the private sector in this city, working with the CRDA, working with the Atlantic City Alliance, working with the county executive and the state. We have others, as many of you know, ready to come and invest in Atlantic City still if we can fix the governmental problem. Because they still see this city, as the county executive described, as an entertainment capital in a country. But if they can't count on the fact that the garbage is going to be picked up and the streets are going to be cleaned and the basic governmental functions are going to be done, they become reluctant to do so. That's the variable I want to eliminate. If we do, Atlantic City will continue to grow and develop. Maybe not just in the gaming area, but in many other areas. As it has already, as I said to you, every year for the last number of years, non-gaming revenue has grown in Atlantic City. So that's the shame of this. The shame of this is that the problems, you know, there's so many times when I'm governor where, you know, you have a problem and the solution is not readily apparent. And you really can't figure out exactly how to fix a particular problem. The shame of this one is the answer is right in front of us. And one other thing on the collective bargaining thing, because I think this is important. You know, you had 15 Democratic senators vote for the takeover bill, 15 of them. And I wonder whether or not the AFL-CIO and the Speaker believe that these folks are anti-union. Is Senator Peter Barnes anti-union? Jim Beach, he anti-union? Nilsa Cruz Perez, is she anti-union? How about Loretta Weinberg? Do we think Loretta Weinberg is anti-union? Jim Whalen, he anti-union? I don't know. Never stuck that way to me. Nick Scutari, anti-union? Paul Sarla, against the unions? Bob Gordon? How about Ray Lesniak? I'm looking at Aaron particularly on this one. You want to tell me Ray Lesniak is anti-union after his career and the legislation he's sponsored and gotten put into law? Nellie Poe, she anti-union? Bob Smith? Brian Stack? Steve Sweeney, anti-union? Joe Vitale? Come on. This is a straw man. They are pro-union people. They have pro-union voting records, but they also are going to make certain decisions that need to be made to save the creditworthiness of an iconic city and the creditworthiness of other cities in this state. That's what this is all about. Otherwise, I go on to deal with some of the other problems I have to deal with and not have to worry about this one and the opportunities. But unfortunately, this is the one I'm stuck with and I'm going to fix it. Yes, sir.
The $33.5 million that was put in the city's budget with the anticipation of the pilot bill passing, did you authorize that money to be put in there?
In anticipation of the pilot bill passing, I said right from the beginning that I would not sign a pilot bill without a takeover bill. I've been saying that for months. So if somehow the mayor misunderstood English, that's his problem. That's his problem, not mine.
Is it not the state's responsibility to plug it?
As far as campaigning against the North Jersey casinos, if you don't get both of these bills that you want, isn't that kind of cutting off your nose to spite your face? I mean, if having casinos in North Jersey truly is the answer to losing gambling business in the state?
No, it's not, because part of the whole idea of North Jersey gaming was about helping Atlantic City also. A large part of the revenue that was generated was going to come back to Atlantic City to right the wrongs that I agree with the county executive on. If I were governor, that revenue would have never left Atlantic City, and since I've been governor, you don't have CRDA revenue leaving Atlantic City. And so part of it is to get revenue back here from North Jersey casinos to be able to do that. So the idea of it is, though, if you've got Atlantic City in turmoil and Atlantic City without money, how do I justify to the rest of the state that we should expand gaming to another part of the state, and how do I tell them it's going to be good? Things have to be in order here, and it has to all come together. And if it all comes together and all interests are aligned, then our ships are sailing in the same direction. If our ships are sailing on a collision course, I'm not going to encourage that collision course to happen. Yes, ma'am.
Governor, what would a takeover look like? What would the Christie takeover in Atlantic City look like? What's the plan? What would happen? Who would get, what could employees expect, citizens, residents?
It would be aggressive and effective. I thank all of you for coming today. I appreciate it very much. And I appreciate your willingness to come down. I want to thank Chairman Formica for being here today. I want to thank the county executive for hosting. I appreciate it a great deal. We're going to continue to work. I'm going to continue to express our views on this, but the position is not changing. There's an assembly voting session tomorrow. The Speaker should put the interests of Atlantic City and its people and the interests of the creditworthiness of the state of New Jersey in the forefront tomorrow. Post the bill, Mr. Speaker. If you want to come from the rostrum, down from the rostrum, and argue against it and vote against it, you're a member of the Assembly. That's your right to do. It is not your right to be a one-man obstruction crew, again, and causing insolvency in the city of Atlantic City and all of the ripple effects that that'll have across the state. It's irresponsible. I hope he steps up to his responsibility in the next 24 hours. Maybe the mayor can pray for him. Thanks.
Hey, how are you?
No, that's fine. I just wanted to make.
How you doing? Hi, nice to meet you, Whitney. Oh, hi, nice to meet you. All right, guys. Well, there you have it. Follow me. I'm going to go live now into the Atlantic City Council chambers. It's a little bit chaotic right now, but anyway, follow me. I'm going to be stopping this live feed, and then I'm going to bring you over there, and then I'm going to come back on. So I'll see you back soon. Follow GoToWhitney.